Well. It seems MSI has finally joined the handheld party. In past videos, I said if MSI were to release a handheld, that would be the only thing that could pull me away from the ROG Ally. And high and behold, here comes MSI with the MSI CLAW handheld PC. I stopped everything I was doing for any and all information that I could get on the MSI CLAW. I've been looking forward to specifically an MSI handheld or an Alienware handheld since the Steam Deck released. And the first little bit of detail that I noticed with the MSI CLAW was the fact that it has a 53 watt-hour battery. Now that's more than the Steam Deck OLED and a lot more than the ROG Ally. But from first glance, you would assume that the MSI CLAW is just a black version of the ROG Ally. It has a fingerprint scanner, the RGB under the analog sticks, but if you look even closer, it actually has RGB buttons, and that's not really something I was wishing for, but after seeing it, I definitely want to try the RGB buttons whenever I can. And besides the RGB lighting, honestly, the MSI CLAW doesn't look all that appealing. It's completely black, so you can't really see any of those fine details like the MSI logo on the bottom right or the MSI logo on the back. Everything's just one color. But besides that, there's not really room for a lot of design. The MSI CLAW is like all vent. The top of the system is completely covered with vents and heat sinks, and the back is almost completely covered with an intake vent. And the only thing that reminds me of is the first time I saw the Xbox One, the original big Xbox One. The top of it, basically the design of it, was 99% vent and 1% gloss. It would have actually been pretty awesome if MSI made their handheld glossy. Now, of course, it'll leave fingerprints, but that would have taken away from the obnoxious amount of vent intake and outputs that this system has around it. But besides my shallow take of the aesthetic of the MSI CLAW, which I'm sure a lot of people won't have a problem with, focusing more on the core power of the system. This handheld is actually powered by an Intel CPU, specifically called the Intel Ultra 5 or 7, depending on which model you get. Obviously, a lot of people are just going to go for the 7 because you have that 53 watt-hour battery to back it up. Now, if I get MSI CLAW in the future, I will no doubt get the Intel Ultra 7. But Intel, as of late, along with MSI, has not been doing that well, honestly. I love MSI. I've had their graphics cards, their motherboards, laptops, but in the past 10 years, MSI has been missing the beat, just like with Asus. Now, the handheld route seems to be the second chance or the second wind for these laptop, graphics card, and motherboard companies, but Intel is still kind of in the shitter with this one, honestly. Intel isn't known for having much power efficiency with their CPUs. It takes a lot of power out of the laptops, and laptops die in around 45 minutes. But it seems like multitasking with Intel CPUs isn't quite the best thing to do with the company and chips past. But the MSI CLAW is powered by an Intel Ultra 5 or 7, depending on which model you get. And I think that's potentially a game changer in terms of how much power that CPU can provide for the handheld, but it is running on battery. And a lot of times with laptops that are powered by Intel chips, full-size Intel chips, or even mobile versions, the only time you'll get the full power of that Intel chip is when you have it plugged in. I hope that Intel has looked at these flaws and corrected them, because this is a handheld that's trying to push the boundaries for other handhelds in the future. So if this doesn't work quite well with the battery and it has to be powered the entire time just to get the full power of that chip, similar to the AMD APUs, like with ROG Ally, and the fact that it can't go 30 watts unless it's powered with a compatible adapter, there's no doubt in my mind that Intel will have slightly more power while plugged in. The details aren't quite out there yet, but from what I've saw, I can only assume that it's just going to act like every other Intel CPU. And the bad part about Intel CPUs as well is that all they do is rebrand them with the same amount of power. They don't really have a proper grading for each Intel chip. It's kind of just bloated BS with Intel lately in the past 10 years. I just think technology has reached sort of a limit in the past 10 years. After I stopped working at a computer store, of course, having actual freedom and power with full-size PCs and laptops is sort of subjective nowadays, at least from the perspective of just watching PC's progress in real time. It hasn't really jumped that far. But yeah, moving on to the screen. It's exactly like the ROG Ally screen. 7-inch, 1080p, 120 Hz, IPS. Now, when I say it's exactly like the ROG Ally screen, that's in terms of resolution and FPS. But as you can tell, so far MSI hasn't released the fact if this screen supports VRR. Now, if the ROG Ally supports VRR and this doesn't, that's going to be kind of a deal breaker for a lot of people. So I really hope if MSI is suiting their handheld with freaking RGB buttons, they'll at least add VRR to their screen. Since it's 1080p 120 Hz, I would assume they can just get from the same manufacturer, or it would be easier to make since they're already being made for the ROG Ally. But it seems like the 500 nits in the screen isn't as bright as the ROG Ally and of course the Steam Deck. But I guess with that information, we'll just wait and see exactly what MSI says about VRR. This is going to be a deal breaker possibly for me. I love to support Intel and the advances they make with PCs and handhelds especially, and I want them to push it even further. So I might just support this just to support Intel and their future endeavors with future handhelds. Hopefully there is a future in that. But going deeper into the internals of the MSI CLAW, which is the software, it seems like the MSI CLAW has a built-in AI system that can categorize, manage, and switch around the power to the battery and the cooling to the system according to what's appropriate. And I think that's pretty cool, but it does take away some control from the user. But the mere mention of the AI system kind of piques my interest and makes me wonder exactly what MSI has planned for this AI system and exactly what it can do. Because that would potentially mean that they can have variable wattages for the CPU, which would mean that it would last a lot longer than the ROG Ally and potentially the original Steam Deck. Not the OLED quite yet, and especially not before it even starts. But along with this AI system, there is extreme performance mode, which I'm assuming is like 30 watts or even possibly more than 30 watts. They haven't really said anything yet about that. And there's power saver mode, naturally. I'm assuming that's going to tap into Windows's power saver mode built into the system, or it's something more extreme like with Asus's ROG Ally with its extreme standby mode and power saver abilities. Now, the wattages haven't really been released, but I'm assuming it's not going to go all the way down to 7 watts for the CPU. With an Intel chip, the lowest just might be 10 watts, and the high might be a lot higher than ROG Ally, which would balance the 53 watt-hour battery to kind of make it last just as long as the original Steam Deck. But starting with the Intel Ultra 5 chip, the MSI CLAW is going to be $699, which is going to match the ROG Ally's price and the Lenovo Legion Go. Congratulate me, because that was my first take saying Lenovo Legion Go. And at $750, you'll get the Intel Ultra 7 chip, which is going to be what most people buy, including myself, potentially. And with the top tier at $800, which I predicted the first time I heard about this, I thought the base price was going to be $800. But at $800, you'll get the Intel Ultra 7 and 1 terabyte of internal memory. And that is $100 more than the ROG Ally and $50 more than the Legion Go. And of course, a whole lot more than the Steam Deck. But yeah, the MSI CLAW, I cannot wait to hear more information about this handheld. And let me know what you know about the MSI CLAW. If you've heard more information through the grapevine, or if I missed something. I know I missed a lot of stuff about this, but I just wanted to cover my thoughts. I am potentially going to get the MSI CLAW. I've been waiting specifically for MSI to make a handheld apart from Asus. I've been supporting Asus and MSI equally over the course of the last 10 years. And I have had slightly more negative experiences with MSI. There's a lot of people out there that just don't trust them, but it's a handheld, so I figure don't take it too seriously. But of course, there are a lot of people that take handhelds very seriously. And of course, I do to a point. This is a handheld. It can only do so much. But considering what handhelds could do just 10 years ago, I think this is exceptionally impressive. And I can't wait to see what the MSI CLAW does, the ROG Ally, Steam Deck, and Lenovo Legion Go does in the next year or so. But yeah, thank you guys so much for watching. Hope you have a good one. Later.